Hello, welcome back to Blender Sushi Live Noding. In this episode, I'm gonna talk about like a very basic concepts, but actually really powerful and very important. It's by now I spend like probably like hundreds of hours using a Blender, but also mostly using add-ons like Blender, like Spreadshock and animation nodes. I am using both of them, and after using the add-on for quite a while, I actually started to get to the idea of like this concept like keeps repeating itself. It's the idea of being able to work with many objects on like having control over many objects in much easier kind of way. So normally you probably don't think about this too much. You just do the work. If you're like a 3D modeler, you just like sculpt your model or design your model until the model kind of follows the blueprints and until you get the final result. You give the texture or whatever, give material, and you did like a single job. But when you are working procedurally, you kind of always think about many objects and many possibilities. You can make a variations of a single object. So yeah, it's pretty simple, but it's like you can think of each object in 3D in Blender can have like a multiple parameters, of course. Like even like this is a single object. Of course, this is a cube where I give it a modifier, subsurf modifier, and wireframe modifier. If I switch it off, I get a cube. But even this very basic objects with a two modifier has a lot of parameters. For example, the locations, and then this object also have like a unique name. This guy have rotations, scale, all the transforms parameters. And inside the modifier also you have this control over the thickness of the wireframe, for example, and the subdivisions, the number of subdivisions. And this object also can have materials with different color, or maybe I give it like just a single basic color, but these objects can have a random object color from these parameters, object color. So there's all like a parameters that you can kind of manually adjust for a single object. If you're thinking, okay, if someone asks you, okay, can you make like a 10 of these objects, you probably, okay, you can make a 10 of these objects like this. So now we have 10 objects, no big deal. And then, okay, that person will say, okay, can you make like a different color? All right, gonna give it different color, and keep adjusting until you find what you want. But of course, at some point you kind of, okay, that's like too many objects. Maybe over 100 objects, you started to get kind of exhausted. You can't actually build it that way. But um, if at the very basic, the power of node-based system like Spreadshock and animation nodes can help you to deal with many objects. Of course, you have many other ways to deal with a big amount of data. Like I actually make a list here, like array modifier, for example. If you have one object and you just want to replicate that object many times and give some randomizations, modifiers can do that. Of course, you can also use programming and coding. With programming, you almost can do anything that's the program enable you to do with a scripting. So that's actually really powerful. But coding and programming can be kind of heavy, kind of difficult. For you need to learn programming. That's something that's actually kind of I'm learning along the way. Inside Blender, you have also system like particle system, of course, and also ways to do object instancing, and that's actually kind of powerful in itself. You can do it that way, and you can control particles, radius, rotations, and then kind of motions, everything under particle system. That particle system is actually really powerful in itself. Even though the very basic particle system is really powerful, You can also use duplications in Blender, dupli-vert, dupli-face, and a lot of ways to do it. But now we have nodes and procedural way, like you know, Spreadshock and animation nodes, just to mention a two of my favorite add-on. These days, actually, in recent development, in not long ago, Spreadshock actually makes the object ID data much easier to access. So in this case, I already have a system running using add-on, using Spreadshock add-on. If I scrub, what I did is just turning all those objects into like different colors and different positions. Just those two. That's if you look at the nodes, actually, it's really simple. The first one I use is the Object ID selector. This guy can select almost all the data blocks in Blender. But what we use all the time is the objects data blocks, because objects data blocks actually include things like lamp, maybe meta balls, font, armature, all these objects that we use every day inside Blender. With this Object ID selector and with mesh and with the name leave it blank, don't give anything. This will select everything. You can actually use the stethoscope and look at what is the data being looked at by Spreadshock. Currently it's looking at everything. But the next node here, I'm using Object ID filter, and I'm filtering by default. I can easily filter by name, and I'm filtering cube with dot. Okay, now what's going on is it's gonna ignore the objects with name cube. It's only gonna grabbing this cube object with name cube with dot. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so that's clear enough. Now that we are filtering the objects we want to work on, we can easily make modifications, such as the delta locations. For example, the delta location is kind of like you can think of it like the default position of each object before you add like the offset on top of it. So this is the offset. So that's the delta locations. I'm currently randomizing it procedurally in Spreadshock. So that's why we are getting this result. The one that's not moving is actually the cube itself. I'm gonna put it on the 0, 0, 0. Actually, in fact, everything can be put back into 0, 0, 0, but I'm not gonna do it. And then I can actually randomize the color as well, no problem. And I can make like a bunch of duplicates. Each duplicate actually, because whenever we do like Shift D runs this commands in Blender, bpy.obs.objects duplicate move. So we can easily duplicate the objects, including the objects modifier and also the material. It comes with it. It's still using a single material. So currently we have like we have 400 objects in the scenes, maybe less, I don't know. But we still have control of every single object. So if I update it, see, I can easily change the location, randomize the color. It becomes very easy. If I want to randomize the scale, for example, I simply add another object ID set and specify scale, plug this object in there, and then if we use like a vector in, we can control the scale of every object right away. So even like in X direction, in the Z directions. Of course, if you know the trick in Blender, you can actually select a bunch of objects and use while holding Alt, you can actually change the scale of the objects at the same time, or even move it in location, rotations. Some of this can be done using this manual way, but if you're doing it procedurally, you have more control, a lot more control actually. In fact, with see, this is even just by scaling, random number generator can give you the result. Let's say we want to randomize all this cube. How many cubes do we have? We have 40. So we give it like 40 different value of random number, and we want to scale between 3 and 11. If we plug that in there and randomize the seed and updates, you get objects with a random scale right away. So you have total control over all these many objects. So that's actually really powerful. That's one thing I want to kind of let you know, like this is like very important piece of information. I'll delete everything except for the original cube once again. So that's the original cube. I will delete everything, so we end up with only a single cube. There is one actually very important information as well. It's currently in SetAttr we don't have a way to duplicate objects while maintaining the modifier. Maybe in the future we're gonna have that that kind of functionality as a node, but we can actually do that using animation nodes. So that's really important. Animation nodes have one node called Object Instancer, and this is actually very powerful. I studied this node the other day, and I just realized this node, even though it's really simple, it's very powerful. You can source a single object like the cube, and as you already know, you can copy from source and then you can make duplicates. See, I just make 5 of these objects. You can see here I have 5, and those 5 actually are kind of still using the same data as this guy. But if we turn on copy full objects and deep copy full objects actually gonna duplicates the modifier data as well. So for each object we can have like a variations of the wireframe, for example, and that's actually really powerful. So I'll select the original. This is the original. Okay, the master. I always separate the master like that. This is the copy, instant copy being generated using animation nodes. Of course, inside animation nodes, you can easily deal with all these instance objects using the loop by looping through objects. But you can also control that using SetAttr. So they kind of both can work both way. If I'm not wrong, if I just update now, SetAttr still kind of controlling all these instance objects. You can see here. I probably have this give this kind of demo at some point, but I think I need to make another video that talks about this in a more clear kind of way. So if we decided, okay, now animation nodes make 100 duplicates of these objects, this guy SetAttr can quickly update it and give you a result like so. So that's very powerful, I think. And this is not limited to, this is totally not limited to anything. Any objects actually have like parameters that you can adjust. For example, if you want to randomize the thickness, so currently I'm manually changing the thickness of these objects, and you can see, okay, what's the attributes that's changing? Okay, this guy, okay, object modifier wireframe thickness. I can actually grab this data, just copy it, save this, and then go back to SetAttr, and inside it I can simply paste that piece of data. Maybe I'll type it. So I'm changing the wireframe, copy that, paste here. Actually, sometimes Blender still keeping the whatever highlighted. I just gonna type this modifiers wireframe thickness equal, I'll just make it equal 1, and for every object. So now I just need to pipe in the object's data. this is the objects data, pipe in there, and suddenly all the objects wireframe have thickness of 1. I can turn it into 0.2. See, it's very easy. It becomes very easy because of the nodes. If you want to randomize the thickness, you can do that simply by using the random number generator as well. Just put in like that, and maybe give it a thickness between 0 and 1. Pipe it into the value and updates. It's refusing. Why is it refusing? Let me check. I know why. Because we are already giving it a value. If you want to work with object ID set, if you want to give it a single value, you can do it like this with equal. But if you don't want, delete that. And now we have random. So we have all these 100 objects, each with random thickness. I'll change this to 0.1 and 0.4, for example. Now you can see more clearly. Some is thicker, some is like less thick. So that's yeah. How many parameters do we have? We have actually randomizing 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters. We can randomize the scale, rotations, all the transforms data. You can actually randomize the subdivision as well, as long that single object is like as long the duplicates is like kind of like the exact duplicates of this guy with the same modifier name, everything can be adjusted very easily using procedural way, using nodes. You can of course do all this using script, using Python scripting, you know, just type it in. If you're a good programmers, you can do that. You should be able to do that. But here with nodes, which is like actually a collection of a lot of programs but made it simple as a nodes, you can do this, you can do everything. All these become very easy and simple. You can change the saturations, you can change the value, change the scale, everything, all the attributes suddenly become exposed to you and very easily modify. Like I said, you can of course not forgetting animation nodes. Animation nodes object, currently I'm using object instancer of animation nodes because SpecShock doesn't have it. But with this guy, you can of course kind of having control over it by using a loop. So don't forget about that. Maybe I'm not gonna do that, but if you tap W and you can loop through objects, you can actually control the objects that way. You can use object attribute output. You're gonna do the same thing, but SpecShock is powerful in that you don't need to do loop. You can just pipe in array of data, list of data, sometimes array of data, and everything will update accordingly. So there you go. That's a quick insight, very important information about procedurality and how you can easily make variations. This is very the most basic things that you want to understand really well. And if you look at it, it's like hundreds of objects, and you suddenly have this kind of complexity. And even though it's basic, it's actually still kind of amazing that you can generate this very easily. You can have like thousands of these objects, and you can update it very easily. So yeah, now we have 1,000 objects. We can randomize it. Everything works. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that's a very useful video for you, and let me know if you have any question, suggestion, feedbacks. If this is not clear enough, in the future I make the same video again, and I will tell you in a more like clear kind of way. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.